My first instrument has been a tape recorder and a microphone. I remember that when I was in my, 13, 14 years old, I had an old Grundig tape recorder that my grandfather gave me, or Telefunken, I think it was. I used to record what we were playing and playing it reverse or slowing down. And then I went to the Groupe de Recherche Musicale, the Music Research Center, headed by Pierre Schaeffer. And Pierre Schaeffer became my mentor, who actually is our father or grandfather to the whole electronic music scene, approaching the music with a total revolutionary concept by saying just the simple idea that music is not only made of notes or harmonies, but it's made of sounds. And it's where I've been really in contact for the first time with electroacoustic music, with what was going to become my life as a musician. My first approach has been really what later on we called sampling. At that time, we are talking about musique concrète. It means that you do music with concrete, organic and natural sounds. In those days, we were all dreaming about a machine who could ease the process of recording and then create your samples. And then, one day, the Fairlight came along. And it was like watching a plane for the first time or a car for the first time, because suddenly you could actually, instead of spending hours doing your own samples on tape, you could just record your dog and playing your dogs on 5 octaves. And that changed the whole thing. Suddenly, this instrument gave me the idea, the concept for one of my albums called Zuluk, where I suddenly say, okay, I really would like to do a vocal albums, but without singers. And the idea was to go all over the world and recording, sampling some voices and some different vocals, processing them in such a way that the vocal elements would be part of the orchestration and the arrangement itself. And that obviously is something that I could only achieve this with the Fairlight. When I see the Fairlight today, I see it with lots of affection and love, because when you think that you could record and sample only 0.8 seconds was the maximum in 8 bits. And we did so much with this instrument. And then this kind of vibratos, coming from the machine, were creating something really great that you obviously couldn't conceive without the limits of the instrument. And then the old sampling concept became suddenly a modern way of doing music. And it created really the vocabulary for the future. The other sampling machine, which was even more sophisticated, it came just a bit later on, was the synclavier. It was in those days like Mac and PC. You had the people from the Fairlight tribe and the people from the synclavier tribe. 2 different tribes. And that shows the Fairlight. So actually the next stage of sampling after the Fairlight has been probably the emulator, because the emulator, the 3 models, were in 12 bits and you were able to sample longer sounds. And obviously it changed a lot. It was still quite raw. And then very quickly you started to have some other sampling, obviously, and the S1000 from Akai went, and that killed almost everything else. I'm still using the Fairlight or the emulator, also because they have such a specific sound. It's like a guitar, actually. It's like if you take a Les Paul from the early 60s. It will have a specific sound that even the best Les Paul today wouldn't have, as we know, as guitar players know. And the same thing with sampling instruments, because the fact that it's in 8 bits or 12 bits, you do something else. It has a definite different sound. You have few steps in history of sampling. If I could make a very rough resume of it, the Fairlight was one, and Contact was the other one. It has been a big, huge change in music. So Contact is not only a sampler, it's also a platform from which you can create new instruments. So it's not only for musicians, it's also for developers. And that's the beauty of Contact. I'm from Lyon, and there is a big tradition of cooking, and I approaching sampling technique like cooking. It's exactly the same thing. Actually, electronic music is like cooking. Instead of dealing with spices and veggies and all that, you deal with frequencies and textures and mixing them together. And actually, an instrument such as Contact is something that it's a concept that is like an oven for for sound. It's cool, it's great. I mean, sampling yourself is very refreshing. I mean, after a while you are lazy and you say, okay, you have a great sound of a cymbal, for instance, great sound of this or that, and I'm using existing presets, taking the sound from the library. But it will never replace your own sound, never. Even if it's not as good technically, it will have something personal which can't be replaced. So my advice definitely would be, do your own sampling as much as you can. Now it's time for me to talk about delays. My first instrument was the tape recorder. Maybe my second instrument is echo chamber or delays. And my unbeatable delay, and I'm always coming back to it, was 2 Revoxes with tape and doing delays with analog tape. Because this sound is actually probably 50% of the sound of Oxygen, because 50% of it was made with delays. I'm obsessed by the sound of delays, and for years I'm trying to get a digital and a plugin able to fulfill my needs, and it never happened. It was always a kind of, the digital delays were too automatic, too mechanical, until I found one which is Replica. When you are talking about textures and having the real richness and harmonics, when you are creating a delay and you want that the delayed sound and event has the right harmonic content. Very difficult digitally, very difficult in terms of plugins. And now actually, even on finished tracks from the album, before mixing, the final mixes, I replaced some of the plugins I had with delays from other brands with replicas, because suddenly it gave the clarity and the space also, because I'm using delays actually really to create some space, not necessarily to create the kind of rhythmic effect. And I was always going back to the Revox and to the analog process and the analog tape process, because it was the only one able to give me this kind of width. It was like a stereo enhancer for me. And I found this with Replica. Working with plugins makes your life so easy in terms of changing orders, changing things, changing the chain of the effects, and also the chain of parameters within the plugin. The plugins allowing you also to be extreme. The worst in any kind of art form is actually to be trapped by your own habits, to go back to the studio doing the same thing. I mean, Native Instruments is constantly offering me different solutions and also challenging myself. It's exciting. I'm really like a kid in front of new toys, except that when you're growing up, your toys are becoming maybe more serious, but it should keep their fun aspect.